Before we begin this episode, I want to give you a brief warning. In this episode, we will be discussing World War II, the Holocaust, and Nazi Germany. Viewer discretion is advised.
Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed at Hipmix 88.9 WEIU.
Welcome to the Tales of Music and Film. My name is DJ Apollo, and today we're doing yet another movie I was not originally planning on covering, but two friends of mine talked me into seeing this movie. We watched it a couple weekends ago, and
you have two guesses to say who it was.
I want to go out on a limb here and say that it was my two buddies by the names of Aidan and Preston.
Never heard of those guys.
Who are they?
Who are those guys? I have no idea, but they somehow convinced me. Like, I'm sitting at my desk, right, doing homework. They're like, Chris, get your butt over here, put the pencil down. You're watching JoJo Rabit.
So here's the thing, viewers. If I don't know, we've mentioned this, but Christian and I, DJ Apollo, we are roommates. So
Yep.
I've had several films where I've just been said, put what you're doing down, we're watching a movie.
And
Yeah.
to be serious, guys, like I have been saying since the first time I was a host on the show, we should do JoJo Rabit. And I pulled teeth. I fought tooth and nail to get him to watch that movie.
Yeah, no,
and
Preston
then
and
he
I worked-
rated it amazingly, and we'll tell you that at the end of the episode. But we all absolutely loved this film. This is one of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah, like, it's just like what this movie did and like what it captured with the many genres it holds, it's just it blew my mind. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was expecting it to be a comedy the entire time, but like, oh, it's way more than that. Way more than just a comedy, my friends.
This is one of the few movies we ever review that we will call a straight masterpiece.
Yeah.
A masterpiece to us, it is truly a masterpiece.
'Cause
Yeah,
we're all film guys. When we say a masterpiece for us, it's when there is absolutely nothing we would change.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
even
kind
if
of
even if it's the most nitpickiest of thing, we will not change it.
And we don't give the word masterpiece like often. I think like compared to the other 20 plus films we've covered on here, I think there's only been like, I would say one or two that we've labeled.
I think it was one, and that was Arrival.
Yeah, and that was Arrival.
I
Yeah,
can't
definitely.
think of any others we've covered that we call a masterpiece.
Yeah, like Arrival was definitely a masterpiece, but like I gotta
we even covered Back to the Future and didn't call it a masterpiece. That tells you how good this is.
Yeah, well, that film's never been a masterpiece.
No,
but it's
but
just,
some people would call it that.
Well, it's more like it's a nostalgia masterpiece. I
Yes.
think that's really
Yeah.
like that one.
Yes.
But yeah, JoJo Rabbit was actually a very fun experience for me. Like, I thought it was a all-around very well-made movie. So it was released on November 8th, 2019, and it has a lot of names in here, but there's a lot of actors in here I've never seen before. Aidan, would you want to name off some of our cast for this movie?
Okay, let's start with our lead, which was the lead character was JoJo. That was played by Roman Davis. I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
Roman Griffin Davis.
Roman
yes.
Griffin Davis. Then there was his co-lead, Takedo. How do I pronounce
Taika Waititi.
Thank you. I can never get his name right. And he was not only our director, but he also played Adolf Hitler.
He was also the producer, I believe.
And the producer. Then we had Scarlett Johansson as JoJo's mother, and then Thomasin McKenzie playing the Jewish girl.
And honestly, another actor in this that I was a huge fan of was Sam Rockwell.
Yes, Captain
Klenzen.
Yeah, it's German, so if any German people are listening, forgive us.
Yeah, forgive us for butchering that character's name, but dude, his performance in this, he was one of the best parts. I think he was my favorite character in the whole thing. I'm not gonna lie, like, he was a great character.
He was a really fun character.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, Klenzendorf. That's how it's pronounced.
Klenzendorf.
Yeah.
Like I said, still, if we're butchering that, Please forgive us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this movie had a budget of $14 million, and the box office was $90.3 million US. So,
Wow.
hey,
yeah,
that's a good success.
Oh yeah.
Well, it always depends on where you're scaling it. If you're scaling it like a Marvel movie, no.
No, but like,
But when it's like a smaller budget film, like 14 million is relatively low budget. You and being able to make that much money, nearly 10 times your budgets, that's amazing.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Like, it made its money back for sure, and apparently it was adapted from Caging Skies. And I'm gonna take a look here and see what that is.
Yeah, I didn't know
It's
that. Look at that.
It's a novel actually by Christine is her name.
Just Christine, nothing else.
Christine. Okay, her last name, it goes like this: Leunens. I don't know how you pronounce that
Here, hand it to me. I can pronounce
yeah,
it.
one.
Christine Lunens.
Yeah, she wrote the novel, and it was released back in November 1st, 2004.
Oh, so it's also relatively a recent book.
Yeah, it's a novel labeled under historical fiction.
Well, it is.
So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I had no idea that this was actually adapted from a book. So that's pretty interesting. But guys, we gotta start though. Like, what did you think of this picture?
I think
Aiden, you go first.
I think first we got to explain the premise of this movie and why it's unique. For one, just the setting itself and the way we follow these characters. So like most World War II movies, especially if it takes place in Germany, really portrays it as like a very horrible place.
Mm-hmm.
But for the sake of this movie, it's not, because our main character is a little boy who is a fanatic when it comes to Nazis.
He is a 10-year-old in the Hitler Youth, to be specific.
Yes, thank you.
And he's super excited about it. Like, the movie literally opens up with him, like, we see a montage of him putting on the uniform. He's like practicing the youth
Youth pledge.
the youth pledge. Yeah. Yeah, so he's practicing the pledge in front of the mirror, and then something happens in this that I was not expecting, like, at all. An imaginary friend, Hitler.
Yep.
Like,
And what's really funny, some interesting trivia behind that, is Taika Waititi plays Hitler. And originally he was going to cast someone because he's like, I don't know if we have anyone that really fits. And then some of them said, I can't remember who it was, but someone said, well, who better to play Hitler than a Polynesian Jew? So then he played the part of Hitler, and it's comical.
yeah, I think
It
it's
is.
I
And-
think it's really funny.
Yeah, like the best thing about his performance as Hitler is that it's not like a real version of Hitler. It is JoJo's idealized version of Hitler.
I believe there. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I believe there's actually a scene where he says to JoJo, like, oh, I've got to go. They're having unicorn at my place tonight. Like, they make it very clear throughout this film that he is an imaginary version. Because what would a 10-year-old boy see Hitler as?
Exactly. As someone who has been indoctrinated by Nazi propaganda, this is exactly what he would imagine as a 10-year-old shut-in kid who wanted an imaginary friend.
Yeah, and I had to admit the parts between them I thought was pretty funny. Like, like the imaginary Hitler's like, trying to boost him up. Like, come on, really say "Hail Hitler!" Like, he's telling him, like, say it loud over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, and the thing that makes it comical is really just the fact that it's a childized version. As like, then you have the knowledge that this was not what it was like. It makes it a little funny, but also it puts an underlying feeling of disturbing. It's like, this is a 10-year-old boy who is obsessed with one of the biggest monsters in history.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy, right? Like, I was randomly looking through YouTube the other day, and I watched some like World War II archive stuff here and there, and I found a video from one of Hitler's speeches that he did in like the late 30s, and I watched like 10 seconds of it. Like, dude, the guy was like straight out just yelling his lungs out to a huge crowd of people for like an hour, you know, like,
yeah, that's very much who he was.
and I'm reading the comment section, like, people were just blown away with, like, you know, like, it's just like dude, like watching the video, I'm just like, I'm watching a guy who was responsible for the death of 6 million people. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
that is crazy.
Like more if you also count the fact that of everything that led before the Holocaust, and then the lives that Germany took in throughout the war of World War II.
Yeah, exactly. And you see, the one thing, and the other thing this movie did, right, while we're on the topic of like archive footage, like after like we see JoJo getting ready, it cuts to a German version of "I Want to Hold Your Hand" by the Beatles.
Yep.
And it's playing over real World War II Nazi archive footage, making it look like it's like a happy dandy little good time.
No, that
like,
is an absolutely great detail.
Because they like cut it and put like cheesy fireworks in there. It's like it's one of those things you just have to see, and it's absolutely hilarious. Like
Yeah.
we cannot do it justice with our description.
With our
No, no, no,
descriptions,
no.
like it's not gonna have any justice.
But yeah, and then it just cuts to when JoJo runs into his buddy, the kid with the glasses, and they like go to
Augie.
Augie. They go to the what would you call it, the boot camp? For
Yeah,
the,
I
for
think
the
that's a
Hitler
good way to
Youth.
put the Hitler Youth boot camp.
And then we get introduced to Sam Rockwell's character, who is right off the bat, I knew I was gonna like him because he goes on like this rant, like I've been placed here instead of leading my men into victory on the front line because apparently you can't have just one eye when fighting.
Yeah, no, it's
like,
just it's so funny and it's so over the top.
That
like,
and he literally describes like having his men get slaughtered in a very easily avoidable incident in a very predictable plan during battle, and so he's leading a Hitler Youth camp.
Yeah, it's
like the
so
funniest thing
funny.
is just like the thing that adds good comedy to this is how on the nose its comedy is, because it's not always my favorite form of comedy, but it works really, really well in this film.
Yeah, it really, really does. And we cut forward in time a little bit, and
Hang on, we got to say why we had the cut forward in time. So, because there's also a good point, key point in the story in this.
yeah.
So, during the youth camp, everyone's just like, it's really shot to portray like these kids are having the time of their lives. But then we have one scene, which is a survival scene where JoJo is forced to kill a rabbit, but he has a kind heart. And he lets it go. He attempts to let it go, but the other youth catch it, and they kill the rabbit.
Yeah,
And the big thing about that is it just shows JoJo, he just wants to be in a club. He wants to go along with the group. In his heart, he is not the same as these people.
Oh no, and that's brought on a very clear from the get-go. You know, it's like the older guys who are trying to tell them to kill the rabbit. He's just like, his face says it all. Like, I don't want to do this.
It's also where the title comes from, because they start mocking him and calling him weak like a little rabbit, and they're like JoJo Rabbit, and that's where the movie gets its name.
Yeah, then he like runs off into the woods. He's like all sad, and then imaginary Hitler comes back and boosts up the confidence level, and then we get another hilarious scene where
JoJo just runs in like the kids are having live grenade trainings. And what does JoJo do? He takes the grenade, runs down range, and then throws it. And then it hits a tree, bounces right back at him, and blows up in his face.
And then you get a funny montage of people freaking out, including imaginary Hitler, who faints when he sees his face.
yeah, it's just like the actress who played the bigger blonde lady,
Rebel Wilson.
I just remember that scene when they're in the ambulance. She looks at him and he's like, he looks like was it a Picasso
Yes,
painting?
a Picasso
Yeah. It's just like, wow.
There were so many one-liners in this
Rebel
film.
Wilson's one-liners were so amazing, and I saw some interviews on set. It was so many takes were lost, mainly just because the cast couldn't contain their laughter, because Rebel Wilson's improvisation was just getting everyone, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, her timing when she said that stuff was hilarious. Like, her character is legit very funny in this
Like, she's
movie.
funny, but she's also one of the worst characters.
Oh yeah, she is, dude. Like, and I'll get into that. Like, I think
we'll
later
get
on
into
in the
that once.
recording.
Yeah.
Basically, what happens as a result of the grenade accident is JoJo can no longer be in the Hitler Youth because they're considering him crippled and he's considered ugly. So now, even though he is what the Nazis considered the Aryan race, he's not good enough, basically. So he's an outcast, and he starts having to.
Yep.
That's how he starts seeing the flaws in what the Nazis were doing.
Yeah, that is the very start of this slow descent to when he finally realizes the Nazis were never right and their ideology was incredibly flawed. Bigger things is like, so the biggest plot point for the film comes during his time when he's now living at home permanently with his mother.
Played by Scarlett Johansson.
Played by Scarlett Johansson. He just does some work for the offices, for the war offices in his town. One day he comes home early, hears something in his sister's room, goes in and looks inside a secret door into the wall, and he finds a young Jew named Elsa Kor, played by Thomasin McKenzie. And that's the whole start of everything, is like he can't go forth with this information because if he comes forth, then both he and his mom will be executed. And
probably some other people too.
And some other people
yeah,
too.
Exactly. And I find it so scary that this character's last name is Core, because I actually went to a Holocaust museum during my first year at Lakewood Community College back in 2018, and I met a Holocaust survivor named Eva Kor.
I wouldn't be surprised if in this one they asked her and used her last name for this one.
Yeah, like she passed away back in 2020 on July 4th. I believe it was.
I would imagine that's probably a very common last name in Germany too.
Yeah, like who knows, but I'd have to look it up. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they gave Elsa the last name Kor to honor her in a sense.
Yeah. And Eva was a twin, so her and her sister were both experimented on by the Angel of Death.
Actually, I think I also met her once, but that was many years ago. I was like, I think 10 or 12.
And this isn't related to the film, but Christian, I think you should kind of shed some light on what the Angel of Death was.
Yeah, since we're dropping that.
Oh yeah, like he was a head Nazi officer. I believe he was like in charge of like the experiments because the Nazis were trying to create the perfect race. And they were trying to figure out what makes these two twins. What genetics is causing them to look identical to one another? Because they were trying to find a way to fastly produce, the perfect race, blonde hair, blue eyes. Because to the Nazis, they considered that perfect,
Well, and they also did a lot of psychological and physical experiments on them to see if they feel each other's pain and things like that.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It was horrible. Like I sat with a crowd of people inside the museum, and it's called Candles. Is the name of the museum, and watching her give her whole story about what her and her family went through single-handedly changed my life forever. Because I'm hearing the story from an eyewitness, giving her story, it's just I got to hear firsthand from a survivor, what real evil is, and dude, she gave me a fist bump when I met her. She was in her wheelchair. I walked up to her because I had to be careful. She said that she recently had surgery on one of her hands, and I couldn't remember which one it was, but I walked out to shake her hand as she formed a fist for me, and we did a fist bump. Dude, she was an incredible lady.
Yeah, I don't remember much from when I met her, but describing her story, it just brought back to when I met her.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the biggest moments for me throughout my life, and I still think about it. I read her book, and it's autographed by her too.
Oh wow!
And her book was a story that everybody I think needs to read, because I think everybody needs to understand what real evil is and how to spot it.
Yeah.
Because at first, the Nazis made it look like it was they were the good guys. You got to know how to spot out evil, because it hides in plain sight where you least expect it,
That's why there were a lot of Germans who would not have ever been okay with the things they actually did had they known they were doing it. Like JoJo would have never supported that, but they
Yeah.
hit it. This film does a good job of portraying that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Like into JoJo Rabbit, like a thing of just like how during JoJo's very idealized version of Nazi Germany, there's the color palette. It's very bright and it's vibrant, but then towards the very end, like the last 30 minutes, it has shattered. His resolve is shattered. He no longer wears his uniform everywhere, and it goes to a very drab gray palette. And then there's also like you can see like the city's not doing well off in the background. Like people are living on the streets. They're struggling to make ends meet. JoJo and his mom only eat like small bits of bread every day.
In like a little stew.
You know, I didn't even notice that, like, because I was so engaged in what they were talking about. I wasn't paying attention to the food portion.
Like,
you know,
that's one of the interesting things with this film. It's just like you notice all these little details on rewatching, and that's the best thing about films is that like you're not gonna catch everything on your first viewing. If you think you are, you're lying.
Unless it's a really bad film.
yeah,
Or
exactly.
very cliche and cookie cutter, which isn't
honestly,
always necessarily
I'm not
a bad
gonna
thing.
agree with the bad one because on each reviewing you'll find another thing they did wrong.
Fair enough, although, yeah, I don't know. There's a couple films I could challenge you with.
Yeah, but
Maybe we'll do that in our other podcast.
yeah, but did you guys manage to look up a quick bit on who the Angel of Death was? Because I want to make sure that we clarify this.
Yeah, like
Josef Mengele, I think.
Yeah, that's who it is.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
like what I'm looking here is basically he was let me see what was his actual rank in the military.
Yeah, like dude, like this guy, like there was a reason he was given that nickname. Like,
Yeah,
dude, he was like
basically just looking at his time in Auschwitz. Like some of these experiments, like this is just from a Wikipedia article that I found, so it's nowhere near as in depth as other things you could find. But
oh yeah,
this
definitely.
but this is still horrifying.
And
what
he
I'm-
was in Auschwitz, like doing this stuff. Mm-hmm. That explains why that concentration camp is so famous.
Well, it's not. Here's the thing: it wasn't just that, but if I remember correctly, on the other things that I've learned with the Holocaust over the years, it was also a big transport hub where they would bring everyone in, then transport them off to the other camps.
Oh,
yeah,
Because
so
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was the biggest of all the concentration camps.
oh yeah, without a doubt. And someday in my life, like I do. Like, it's not like I want to go to this place, but I feel like I have to. You know what I mean?
it's one of those things where it's so awful you can't look away, but it's important to know.
Yeah, and it's just like I feel like I owe it to Eva, you know, because that's where her and her sister was taken to. That's where her and her sister were experimented on. Like, there is a very famous photograph that you can find in some history books of when her and the other prisoners were released from the camp. And there's a famous picture of all of them walking out the front gate, and her and her sister are right in front. Like they're like, and they have like the biggest smiles on their faces. You know, like
Well, yeah,
you
when
can
they
see
got-
those
when they got-
pictures in the museum.
Yeah, when they got
Yeah.
liberated, why wouldn't they be smiling?
Audience, I'm sorry we went on kind of this
Well, no,
off
I don't
trail,
think you
but I
should
think
be.
it's very
No,
important.
It is very important with the subject matter that we're covering in this film, like, because that's also another thing. Like, this film has nothing to do with the Holocaust. Like, it mentions it in the background, but this film is not about the Holocaust. It is about a young boy growing up in Nazi Germany.
Which is
Yeah.
very unique because you don't see that from World
Well,
War
it's just
II
because,
movies.
and rightly so, like, touching on that subject is incredibly taboo.
Yeah.
And why do you think, like, this film was a low budget? It was primarily done indie.
Because probably
with,
no one really wanted to give him the chance.
no-
And yet look what he did with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why he produced this. He did this all himself. Like,
Yeah. And Taika Waititi, if you're listening to this, first of all, I am a huge fan of yours, so if you're listening, thank you. But second of all, seriously, I appreciate you making this movie. This is truly one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, definitely for me too, because like I think, well, I wouldn't call this one of my favorite movies of all time, but this was one of the best movies of 2019, like without a doubt, in my personal opinion.
yeah.
And so So I think the next thing that we should probably do here is discuss what was your guys' like favorite parts in this.
Preston, you go first. I need to think.
Yeah,
my
Preston, you
favorite
go.
part is when he's sitting there talking to his mom and he's getting really upset because she's happy that they're hearing that the allies are winning the war, and she's happy because she's ready for the war to be over, and she doesn't agree with what Germany's doing, and he gets very angry and he's like, I wish my dad was here instead. And she goes and sort of like plays a dad card in the best way she can because his dad isn't there because he was brought into war and died, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's just such an emotional moment, and the way that Scarlett Johansson can play that completely opposite kind of character in that way is just so well done.
And just like it's so heartbreaking. You just realize like how like she misses her husband just as much as JoJo misses his dad. But it's just like she has to hold this together and having this big secret and
on top of the fact that her daughter died from the flu.
yep.
Yeah, it's just like, dude, this family has had its fair share of suffering. And it's just like, dude, I gotta, as a side note, Scarlett Johansson's performance in this, like, she got an Oscar nomination for this movie.
Oh, she
And
did?
Yeah, she did.
rightfully so.
She got 2 Oscar nominations in 2019 for 2 completely different movies. She was apparently the first actress to do that.
What
to
were
have
the films?
It was Jojo Rabbit. I cannot remember the other movie that she was nominated for that year, but apparently,
got it.
because I remember seeing it on the television, she was like one of the first actresses to get 2 different nominations, and like, 'cause she had 2 movies come out that year where she was one of the lead characters, and she got a nomination for it. But dude, Scarlett Johansson's performance in this I had no idea. Like, you need to keep in mind that I'm still used to seeing this woman as Black Widow in the Avengers movies. Like, this is the first time that I've really seen her in something serious, but her performance in this was just unlike anything. I had no idea that she had this level of like range. Like, I think the Oscar-winning scene for me was when she impersonated like JoJo's dad. Like, that scene was so heartbreaking to see. Like, it was crazy. But if you want to find out more about her awards and everything, you can find a quick little Google search on Wikipedia. But I think that will help you out. Because, like, I'm not sure if she had any other nominations before this.
The other one she got nominated for, it was actually in 2020, but it was Marriage Story.
Oh, yeah, Marriage Story. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
That was with Adam Driver, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's-
that was also a really well-made film.
That's another one I gotta
Maybe
check
another
out.
one, but all right. So my personal favorite scene, when the Nazi officials who come and search JoJo's house towards the end of the film.
Dude, that scene, just like, oh my gosh, like, don't find out, keep the act up, come on, girl, you got this.
It's
Like,
it's so hard, and it's just like your heart is in your chest throughout the whole scene, and then there's the comedic element to it. With, I believe, they said this was the scene they wanted to throw in as many Heil Hitlers as humanly possible, and by God, they succeeded.
so a little context for you regarding this scene. So over the course of the movie, we JoJo forms a really awesome friendship with the Jewish girl that his mom is hiding from the Nazis. Her name is Elsa Kor, played by what was her name again?
Thomasin McKenzie.
Thomasin McKenzie, and their friendship starts off pretty rough. Like, literally, like, one of the first things she does is that she steals JoJo's knife and keeps it for herself. And she, like, tells him these fake evil facts about Jews, like, don't make us angry or we'll
Well, of course, she's playing into JoJo's fantasy. Ideas of what they are.
Yeah,
Also, when he
exactly.
first discovers that she's there, it is the most comical,
Yeah.
overdramatic, like horror scene type of
Like,
thing
it was
it's
ever.
just-
hilarious.
Like, honestly, you can think of like Kevin McAllister looking at the neighbor in Home
Yes.
Alone.
That's basically what happens, but with horror music.
Yeah, that whole scene was just like, what a classic horror movie trope. I love it. It's like it's making fun of like the horror movie cliches that we see, and you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But over the course of the movie, their friendship gets better and better, and then towards the end of the movie, so JoJo's mom is out doing something. We don't know what yet, but now it was the Gestapo, right? That show up to
Yes.
JoJo's
Yes,
house,
Gestapo.
and the head guy was played by Stephen Merchant as Captain
Dirts.
Captain
Dirtz.
Diertz.
Thank you, Preston.
You're welcome.
And they walk in, right? And JoJo's trying to keep an act of like, no, we're not hiding any Jews. And like halfway through, like he's running out of things to say. Then out of nowhere, Elsa shows up at the doorway impersonating his dead sister. And
Well, it's not even he runs out of things to say. He just didn't have his knife, which was the knife she stole before.
Yeah, like she still had his knife with him, and she reveals that I'm here. I took his knife because he was messing with me.
Yeah, and dude, like, and the most nerve-wracking scene for me is where she has to look for her ID paperwork.
Oh yeah,
And
'cause
like
it's
and you're watching this like
what if the paperwork's not in the desk? Like she's looking through the desk, but you're just like, I don't know if she's looked in there. I don't know if she knows it's there.
Yeah,
Maybe it's there,
exactly.
maybe it's not.
and Sam Rockwell's character like holds the paperwork and he's waiting for her to recite her birth year and everything. It's just like you're hoping she's got that all memorized.
And here's the real kicker. She gets it wrong, and he says it was correct and saves them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like-
Like you find out over the movie that
Klenzendorf, Captain Klenzendorf, is essentially JoJo's guardian angel through all of this.
Yeah,
he saves
literally.
his life like 3 times.
not just him, like he saved him and Elsa's lives multiple times throughout this movie.
Yeah,
like
'cause- and you can understand why, like, especially why he wants to take care of JoJo, because he is in charge of the program that is preparing these children to go fight in Hitler's war.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he's starting to get disillusioned. That's why he was willing to help, both here when Elsa was impersonating his sister, and then at the end after the Allies have taken the city.
yeah.
And part of what makes this movie so incredible is the nonverbal messages it sends. Like, you can tell just by the incredible acting of Sam Rockwell and Scarlett Johansson that they were both, you just know they were relieved. They knew that grenade was a blessing because that would mean he doesn't have to go and fight.
Yeah, and also as a little side note, I'm not gonna try to be nitpicky here, but that grenade scene, like, he should have lost like a leg or something. You know what I
Yes.
mean? In real life, like, dude, it's like right in front. It literally lands right in front of him, and the only thing he gets
it
is
does
a
mess
slight,
up his leg.
He has
Like,
a
yeah,
slight limb and a
well,
couple of
here's-
scratches on his face. In real life, he would have lost like both his legs or something.
Yeah, because remember, it landed right in front of his legs. There's
And-
a foot of distance. If it was farther away, he might have gotten shrapnel and had an injury like that.
And keep in mind,
It
this
was-
is a German stick grenade we're talking here. This sucker is bigger than our American grenades. You know,
Yeah, and
like,
those things are more
I-
boom than shrapnel.
I refuse to see this movie as anything other than an absolute masterpiece, so I'm going to pretend you didn't say that.
No,
I'm
here's the-
sorry,
Shut up,
Preston.
Shut up. Remember what we said? Masterpieces are things that I wouldn't change. And even if it is nitpicky, I wouldn't change that.
yeah, like
because it was funny and it was necessary.
yeah,
Like,
definitely.
they needed
like-
JoJo to blow himself up because how else is he supposed to not fight in the war?
Yeah, exactly. And I just think it's so funny. Just it bounces off the tree, lands back in front of him. He's just like, oh crap.
And
No,
then the
no,
really
get it- no,
cheesy
get it right.
prop dummy that you can tell they used for him falling.
It was so funny, like, because they were smart to do it as a wide, but
Yeah.
you could
Kind of
still
flop.
clearly see that was a dummy.
That was
It's
a
just
dummy.
And
so-
I think they were trying to make that clear.
Like, you know what, dude? Like, it's so funny. Like, I want to stay on topic here, but like, Saving Private Ryan, for example, there's multiple scenes throughout that. If you pause, like when a soldier is about to be blown up by shrapnel, if you pause it, you can tell it's a dummy in a suit. You know
Well,
what I mean?
that's
Like,
just true with any film, especially when it was all practical compared
Yeah.
to nowadays where it's mostly CG.
yeah.
Saving Private Ryan, that's a sad movie. Oh my
We are
goodness.
not doing that one.
We are
I will
not.
not bring myself to watch that thing again.
That is too serious to deserve to be reviewed on a podcast.
Like
That's
that-
one of
No, it
those where
doesn't-
you should see it. but
Like,
don't
yeah,
review it.
like me and Kodo Man, actually, we covered the beach sequence on
Covering a sequence. Yeah.
Yeah.
the whole movie.
Oh god, I can't sit through because I just get so depressed and I need to go turn on something else.
I can
Yeah.
barely get through the opening scene. That's how well they did that movie.
Dude, that scene has been regarded that movie has been stated as the most realistic World War II movie that will probably ever be made. Like when that movie hit theaters, veterans literally walked out because it was too much for them to handle. Because like they were interviewed, some were interviewed afterwards. Like I read a comment, right, of a guy who saw the movie opening weekend and he saw veterans waiting outside and like one of them told them like that's as real as Hollywood's ever gonna get, you know, like it was crazy like how well Steven Spielberg was able to recapture, you know.
It's especially hard for me because my great-grandfather fought on Normandy on D-Day and he parachuted in.
Oh, so he was with the 101st Airborne.
Yes,
like,
and
dude,
his best friend died doing the same thing right next to him.
Dude,
he
that's
jumped.
crazy.
He looked up. His friend was dead.
Dude, that is crazy.
Yeah,
and but yeah, so for me, so to get back to my question earlier, favorite scene, right? I think my favorite scene for me would have to be where, you know. So before this scene, right, everything's been comical and everything, and then like JoJo and his mom are walking through the city, and you see the people hanging in the nooses in the town square,
and then those were Germans who had helped Jews, I believe.
Yes,
like dude, that movie grinded to a halt for me. Now it's been comedic, and then out of nowhere, boom.
Well, like, because it was very central to the plot, because, like, JoJo has still been holding on to his idealized version, but that was JoJo's mother just showing this is the truth.
Yeah, like, he literally
like, she forced, even though JoJo did not want to look, she forced him to look, this is the truth.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that's what Germany was actually doing.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's the thing, like I said, this film is the perfect balance between a comedy and a very serious drama. Because, so, I want to go to the last 30 minutes of this film, because that is when this film has just had giant tonal whiplash at this point.
Oh, without a doubt. Dude,
So-
dude, the last 30 minutes, I think, could be its own movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, shut up, let me do this. So,
no, you're good. Go ahead. I'm sorry, guys. Wait,
It's okay, Aiden.
Don't interrupt me when I'm getting on a roll.
Yeah, okay,
I was thinking the same thing, Aiden. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. But, okay, Preston, shh, the floor is yours, Aiden.
Shut up, Chris.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do a cool little introduction, but...
All right,
Aiden,
shut up. Okay, so this is the point, like I said, when the color palette has completely changed. It is now at a drab gray. And the first thing is just JoJo is wandering the city looking for food.
Yep.
And what does he finds some of the posters that he hangs up. He tries to like restore them after they're falling down. But then he walks to the town square where we saw the people hanging. And
Also, he's going after a butterfly, showing how innocent of a child he is.
Yep, he spotted a butterfly and he started going after it. And then when it stops and he gets out of his way, he turns to look to find his mother.
And dude, the way it shows the audience that it's her, you just see her shoes.
Mm-hmm.
If you pay attention, there's several scenes with the mom where you just see the shoes.
Those shoes are a MacGuffin.
Yeah, and also, like, the thing about shoes is, like, the thing of JoJo's innocence in that, like, he can't tie his shoes. It's a simple thing to show off his innocence.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a little detail, shoes. Then at the very end, he ties his shoes by himself. Yeah.
Dude, like
showing
that,
he's grown up.
Dude, that scene was the equivalent of having a baseball bat hit me right in the stomach. You know?
Oh, yeah,
It's
no,
just
like...
And it needs to be there in this kind of movie.
Like, while it is sad and, like I said, it's the point that, like I said, it is not just a comedy. Because, like, if this film was only a comedy, it would have failed in every way.
Yeah, because like dude, it's physically impossible. Like you're making a movie about a kid in the Hitler Youth in a town during World War II.
No, anything really about World War II, you can try to put comedic elements into it, but at its core, it cannot be a comedy because it's just not going to work.
And this is the only comedy I've ever seen that succeeds in.
Yeah,
I doubt
With
any other
World War
movie is going to be able to try to like. There's no there's
unless
no
someone
way,
who
like,
shares a creative mind the same as Taika
Taika Waititi.
Thank you. I apologize. I cannot pronounce his name.
Yeah. So yeah, those are our favorite scenes, right? But like, dude, what do you think was the most like, dude? So most emotional scene.
Okay,
like
for me, I'm gonna keep going back on my 30 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Last 30 minutes. Then there's the scene, the Allies have invaded the town.
Yep.
And JoJo, he's just mindlessly wandering as he is seeing war. And one scene that it has some elements that are played off, like when you look, they're kind of funny, but it's still very serious. Like we have Rebel Wilson hooking grenades up to kids and saying, "Hey, go give that soldier over there a hug."
yeah,
Which is just barbaric.
yeah, it's just
no,
like,
but it's really. But one thing that hammers home is the fact that the war. They are getting desperate at this point to do anything.
Well, at that point, Hitler had already committed suicide, and every other country in the
Well,
world might as well have been marching up there.
you know what? Yeah, you know what this scene reminds me of, right? Another World War II movie, Fury, with Brad Pitt. And there's like, dude, like that movie takes place just a few months before the war ends in 1945, where the Allies were in Germany. It's about a five crew member who operate a Sherman tank, and during that time, the Nazis knew that they were losing, and they were literally finding anyone who could hold a gun and go shoot at the Americans.
Yep.
And like towards the beginning of Fury, like once the crew gets back after a battle, they head back out again with a tank battalion, and they get ambushed at a road, right? And the open fire into the woods. Brad Pitt's character walks in there, and it's a bunch of kids for the ages of like 8 to 10.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yep, and that's the thing this film also shows, is that like it has the montage of everyone fighting, and it's showing kids holding weapons. They are firing. It doesn't. I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't show on screen a kid dying or getting shot like with a squib.
But it's very highly implied.
Well, yeah, like same thing with the kid with Rebel Wilson throwing the suicide kids at them. Like it just shows them going around a corner, then a blast.
And you know what else that reminds me of is like during the end of World War II, when we were fighting the Japanese as well. Like during like the last year of fighting, the Japs knew that they were losing. So what they did was
The kamikaze pilots.
they were literally they were crashing their planes into our battleships as like a last minute effort to do as much damage as possible. You know, like.
Yeah.
Just like, dude, when like it's like they were willing to do anything if it meant gaining an inch of ground.
Even
you know,
though
like,
most of the time the kamikazes didn't even succeed, and then they framed it as if they were as propaganda to the Japanese public.
right,
to keep them going. Just say, yeah, no, it was absolutely atrocious. Like that's the thing with like any real war is like it's always atrocious, but towards the very end when there is a losing side, it's just worse.
Yeah, it gets bad, man. Like the barbaric things that they do, you know, it's just like you wonder, it's like what runs through, you know, people's heads to justify that.
To be honest,
like,
let's be completely honest with ourselves here. We'd probably do something similar in that kind of situation.
And here's the thing, I
when
think
we're that brainwashed.
yeah, there's a lot of like psychological things that go into this, right?
Yeah, no,
You know,
I think
like,
at this point we should stop it there, just because we are not the types of people to talk about this.
Oh, no,
we
like,
are
not
educated.
we are.
no, not even close.
That's why I'm
No.
just being realistic. Like
Yeah.
Humans, just in general, when they're desperate, they do things you can't imagine outside
Yeah.
of it. And
Like,
I'm not
yeah.
going to say I understand what it's like,
Yeah,
but I
no.
do get that does happen.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and to get back to the movie with the last 30 minutes, like, dude, there was something about the final 30 minutes for me that stood out to me from the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Like the most emotional scene for me in this whole thing was surprisingly not when the mom was killed, but when Sam Rockwell's character sacrificed himself for JoJo.
Yes.
Dude, that
So-
scene, like, oh my gosh.
So let's do a bit of context for this scene.
Yes.
So during that whole battle sequence, Rebel Wilson's character throws a German jacket onto JoJo just so the Germans know not to shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
But then this is after the Allies have won. The city has fallen. It's been taken by the Allies.
Yeah.
And they are rounding up the German soldiers. They see JoJo wearing a German jacket, throw him with everyone, and that's where he runs into Sam Rockwell's character. And then they talk for a moment, and Sam Rockwell says how Scarlett Johansson's character was
His
a
mom
genuinely
was
good person compared to him. and then he does one final kindness. He gives JoJo a hug, then quickly takes the jacket off and pushes him away, calling him a dirty Jew.
Yeah, and acting like I don't know, get this dirty Jew away from me, you know,
Yeah.
and
then
stuff like that.
And then the allies shoo JoJo away so he doesn't have to witness this, and then we hear gunshots as he is killed.
And
While JoJo is screaming no at the top of his lungs.
like no, like he's literally screaming like no, leave him alone, and he's being dragged away. You see him smiling because it's like he got to do one last good thing.
He got
you
to
know,
die
like-
doing a kindness.
Because in reality, they were probably going to kill him either way.
Oh yes, no, he was 100%. There was no way he's getting out of that alive.
And,
Yeah.
And so he died happy because he knew he did something good.
Yeah, exactly. And Preston, what was the emotion? What was like a very emotional part for you?
Well, that was certainly my most emotional part too, as every time I see it, I cry. But another very emotional part I want to bring up, right after he sees his mother, when he goes back to his house and he's with Elsa, and he just breaks down and cries.
And realizing that she's the only, she is now the only family he has left, as they kind of just established that these two become really close, and she basically fills in the role as his older sister.
Yeah, 100%. And like one thing that confused me about this, why did he stab her in the shoulder?
I think it was just frustration.
Like it was
just...
the fact that it was him feeling like if she hadn't been a part of their life, his mother never would have died. Because
Yeah.
if she hadn't as far as we know, Elsa is the only Jew Scarlett Johansson has helped.
And, well, we also realized that she didn't die for helping Elsa because they didn't know about Elsa. She was found placing like propaganda papers everywhere,
Yes.
talking about
So
how
that's
wrong
why
it
they
was.
killed
Yeah,
her.
that's
Okay.
why.
Okay.
They never found out about Elsa.
Otherwise,
They found
Elsa
out-
would have been gone by the time he got back home.
Oh yeah,
No,
true. I mean,
they
like
found out about Scarlett Johansson's character leaving around propaganda opposing the war.
But
okay,
that was
okay.
just him in sheer frustration, feeling like in that
Like,
moment
it was
with
all
grief,
Elsa's. It was
that
all
her
Elsa's fault. And
But then
Yeah.
right
and
after that, he's like,
he's sad
he
and
crumbles.
And that's the thing that I loved about Elsa was that she didn't blame him for that, because she's like, this is a 10-year-old boy who just he's already lost his father, and then he just lost his mother.
He's lost his father. He's lost his sister.
He's
For all
lost-
he knew at that point, Yoki was dead.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And like, dude, we have to give a quick little shout out to Elsa because, like, dude, think about her position, right? We find out like her parents are killed. Did she have siblings? I forget.
I don't think they
That's not
mentioned
established.
That's not
but-
He had a
established.
fiance who
But
died.
but like we kind of like JoJo tries to like discourage her away, and you think like throughout the scene you're just like, oh god, this is so cringe. But then at the end, Elsa reveals that her fiance has been dead for years. But even just so she always knew JoJo's little fake letters were fake, but it offered her a little bit of kindness and just a little warm spot.
and some entertainment, to be honest.
Yeah,
you got
it-
this 10-year-old making up
Like
letters.
yeah, like
and reading
like when
them
I
to
first
you.
watched it, I'm just like, there is no way she can actually be believing this. And then instead of real, no, she never believed it. She was actually getting humor from it.
It was
Yeah.
mutual for both of them.
yeah, it
But
was.
They both need it.
Um,
Like that's the best thing is that this film established at the end. They need each other.
Yeah, exactly. And a little context. Her fiance apparently died of tuberculosis.
Yes.
Wasn't he fighting for Germany? Was he put in the war? I
He
forget.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing is, earlier in the film, we kind of skipped over it, but Elsa says that the first thing she will do when she's free is dance. And how do they end the film?
With
the
the
two of them dancing in the
dancing.
streets.
Yeah, like, dude, that was perfect. Like,
It's just,
dude, it's just like the ending to this movie really stuck out to me. It's just like, you know, like I feel like that really hammers home, like, dude, we take so many things for granted. Like, just, you know, I just want to simply dance. She could have said anything. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's the first thing you want to do? Like I just
Go
want
to Paris. Yeah.
like I
no,
want to.
she just wanted to dance. She wanted to enjoy the fact that the war is over and I am free.
More than that, she just wanted to enjoy being alive.
Yes.
Because, like, keep in mind, Elsa's, like, what, 16, 17 at this point?
Yeah.
Like,
Something like that.
I'd
Yeah.
say 16, 17.
And it's
if
just
we want to
like-
go off of Thomas and Mackenzie's age, how old is she?
because, like,
All right, so she was born 2000.
so she would have been 18 when they filmed the movie. She would have
Yeah.
been 18. Like, keep in mind, right? She's like a 17, 8-year-old teenager who's just starting her life, you know, and she's already had to spend so many years in hiding. She just wants to live, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and just the simple thing of, I just want to dance. Like, dude, like, that just really hammers home for me, you know, just we take such small things for granted.
Yes.
Yes.
The fact that we're able to have this conversation right now we're
And
taking
recording
for granted.
it, you
Yeah.
know, like-
Because if the Nazis had won that war, this movie wouldn't exist and we wouldn't
Yeah,
be here
like-
talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, honestly, this is just something I want to say. An interesting show I recommend on Amazon Prime. It's called The Man in the High Castle, and it's a very interesting show that takes place in a world where the Allied powers lost World War II. Very interesting series. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, because you see, like, I often get fascinated with history because, like, I've always been a big, like, I get really interested in, like, what if scenarios. Like whenever, like, I read about a disaster, it's like, oh, if only this one thing hadn't happened, it would have prevented the whole thing. You know, you wonder, like, oh, what if this had happened? You know what I mean? Like, I get really fascinated with, like, that kind of history.
Yeah. You know, I think since we're getting close to the end of this, I think we should end this with one very funny character. and
Okay.
inclusion
Yeah.
into this
Ended
film.
on a high note.
And
Yes,
ended
end
on a
this on a
higher
high
note.
note.
And who
I
is
went
it?
the side character played by Alfie Allen, Freddie Finkel's character.
Freddie Finkel.
So, for anyone who don't knows, that was Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones. This character is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, wasn't he with Sam Rockwell's character?
Oh, it is heavily implied that those two were gay and
Yeah.
they were in a relationship
which
together.
is ironic because the Nazis didn't like those either.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
kind of just more is like why Sam Rockwell's
well,
character was against the Nazi party.
Can I please say this? Now remember, no stabbing. No stabbing.
Yes, like so during the opening speech when JoJo's at the Hitler Youth Camp, Alfie Allen's character, he is just shouting back and repeating everything that's said, and it's
Yeah.
so funny.
Captain Glenzendorf, he comes up and he's like, "I'm Captain Cade," and he goes, "Captain Cade, woo!"
Oh
It's so
man,
good.
dude, and
And just the name Freddie Finkel is
Yeah, no,
so
it's
funny.
so funny.
I would pay to have my name changed. Like, imagine having to live your life with that name,
My name is Freddie Finkel.
dude. And like, okay, my favorite scene with him, right, is when Sam Rockwell's character is like, "No, I wanted actual German Shepherd dogs, not literal German
Yeah,
Shepherds."
literal German
Because they actually got German Shepherds.
Oh my gosh! And don't we see them in the last 30 minutes fighting?
Yes.
Like,
Yes,
Yeah.
with
oh my.
Freddie just holding up a vinyl player playing music.
And the German
Yeah.
Shepherds were there fighting too.
Yes, the German Shepherds were also there.
Yeah, it's just like,
But what about you,
Dude.
Chris? Funny character.
oh man, a funny character for me would have to be JoJo's friend with the glasses. What's his name?
Yoki.
Yoki, like, dude, one of my favorite scenes with him is towards the end when JoJo sees him. He shouts his name. Him and our kid are literally carrying a bazooka. They're like, JoJo! They drop it, and the rocket fires at a building. and he's just like, oh god.
Yeah, and he's like, "I'm gonna go home and give my mom a hug." Like,
You know,
Yeah,
what,
like-
actually, just thing on that. Like I saw, that was what? God, I can't get his name.
Taika Waititi.
Thank you, Preston.
Taika Waititi. He said in an interview that was one of his favorite lines that he wrote for this one because just like that's all any kid would want in the end. Sometimes all you need, just I need a cuddle.
Yeah, I just need a hug from mom.
You know
yeah.
what? Just like JoJo finally learned to tie his shoes, Aidan finally pronounced his name right.
Yeah, like, dude, you went through
We're
your own
cutting this
personal.
podcast here, and I'm gonna beat these two senseless.
Yeah, like, dude, you had your own story arc within the podcast. Mine blown.
No, here's the thing. We got to prove this. I can say it right now. Taika Waititi.
There we go.
Yay!
Yay! He got it. And now, guys, we gotta get to the big question. What would you rate
hold
this
on. I
movie?
haven't talked about my character
Yeah.
yet.
Oh no,
Don't
Preston.
skip Preston.
Preston, I'm so sorry. Preston,
I have
please.
to say, Hitler himself was absolutely hilarious in this. We can't do this podcast without talking about him. With he gets so petty at the end because you see scenes with him getting jealous of JoJo spending time with Elsa.
Yeah.
And there's a part where he's like, just give me a howl for old time's sake.
Yes,
And he's
at the
so
very end when
creepy.
when JoJo has completely he does not believe in this ideology anymore. He has truly abandoned it. Hitler's there, and she's like, "Heil me,"
and he says, F off, Hitler, and kicks him
Just
out a
kicks
window
him out the
in the
window.
most comically unrealistic physics ever.
Yeah.
Because he's imaginated.
Like
Yeah,
it is
he's
the
a- yeah.
equivalent of in Django Unchained when Django shoots Candy's sister and just shoots her, and then she defies all laws of physics.
She just goes flying into the living room.
Like honestly, I think after this, because you haven't seen Django, right, Preston?
I have.
Oh, you have?
I've seen it. I've
Okay,
seen it.
so you guys
like
have seen it.
That's like top 3 Tarantino movie for me.
Well,
amazing movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that will probably do it for this episode.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know what else we're really talking about, but that brings me back, right? The big question, the rating for this movie, what would you give it? If we're talking on a scale of 1 to 10.
10 out of 10.
10.
Yeah, 10 for me as well. I knew what the answer was going to be before I even asked. This is a 10.
Why
Without
do you
a
ask
doubt.
questions you know the answer to?
Well, I mean, just I don't want to speak for you guys. I want to hear your own personal opinions.
But yes, this film is 100% a 10 out of 10.
Now, would you recommend people who haven't seen it to watch it?
God, yes.
And now, here's the thing, though. People who haven't seen this before, what is the mindset they should go into it when they're watching this?
One, you have to be open to enjoy the comedy aspects, but appreciate the very much underlying tones and how serious it takes Nazi Germany and how bad it really was.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go into it. Because honestly, when I was going into this movie, I didn't know what mindset to have. I'm like, okay, is this a serious movie? Is it a comedy? I was going through all kinds of things. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, this boy went on an emotional roller coaster when we were playing this film.
Yeah, exactly. But man, I'm so happy that that I watched this, and I'm glad I took your advice, guys, and I watched this with you.
One of these days, he's going to take us seriously.
One of these days,
one of
he'll be
these days.
we recommend a movie, and they'll be like, yeah, let's watch it then.
To be fair, we haven't reviewed this movie yet, but there was one just last week that we recommended, and he immediately was on board. And I don't want to say it in case we actually review it, but
yeah, we'll save it. But I did watch a new movie lately, very good, directed by Ryan Johnson.
Shut up.
Okay, no more hints. No more hints.
I mean, that's not that much of a hint. It will just get suspense flowing.
But yeah, but that marks the end of this recording. I had so much fun getting to review JoJo Rabbit. I think this movie, a decade from now, I think it's gonna be under the classical top movies of all time. I think it's gonna hit the Ghostbuster, Back to the Future level of I think it's gonna really touch all kinds of audiences for generations to come and introduce them, to what the kids thought World War II was, but how wrong they were and stuff. But it has a lot of important messages in this movie that I think people need to see. And I'm so happy that we got the opportunity to discuss this movie. And I really enjoyed doing this recording with you guys. Seriously.
Always fun being on here, buddy.
Yeah.
And I think we're ready for the official announcement of the other podcast.
Yes. So we have this. So we've been tossing and turn ideas for a brand new podcast, and we've been going through the ideas. We did a test run, a demo, if you will, and we think we finally have a formula down on what we want to do. And would you guys like to announce what is the name of this supposed show?
This new podcast is
Too much chaos, not enough film.
So we were literally sitting in this very room like a couple months ago, just bouncing ideas back and forth for names. It's kind of funny to me. It's just the most basic thing. What's the name of it? It's just
that was the hardest.
that
thing
was
to
the
come
hardest
up with.
thing.
Yep, but
Now here's the thing though. Do you remember which one of us said too much chaos?
that was Preston.
It was me.
That was Preston?
I said too
Okay.
much chaos, not enough film.
The minute that came out of his mouth, That's it. We're using it, you know, like.
Yep.
And the premise behind the show is like, Aiden, would you want to give like a
So
description?
the premise is we are gonna we censor ourselves in this. This is gonna be a completely uncensored podcast, and a big thing for this is just we are gonna be reviewing movies, but we're not gonna be as selective like we are with this podcast, and it's gonna include us. We're gonna be bouncing all over the place. There's absolutely zero structure. We don't go in with any mindset. We usually come up with what film we are gonna do the minute we sit down and record.
Yeah, but I just think it's so funny. Like when we were doing our test run demo, like we did a recording talking about like the Hunger Games movie, and that whole thing. I'm not kidding you when I say this. It was just pure chaos.
Yep,
for like a
and-
solid hour.
There was truly not enough film to the point that
Oh, God, no.
it was not acceptable.
Like, dude, like I think we talked about like 15 different topics in that 1 hour.
Oh, yes.
Like it was crazy.
Yeah, but that is going to be our new podcast, probably after you have listened to this episode of Music and Film. Too Much Chaos, Not Enough Film will finally go live.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to get the quote pilot recorded soon. And do you want to announce the movie we're covering?
Our first film for Too Much Chaos, Not Enough Film will be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
So I'm very excited to get that movie reviewed because the Indiana Jones franchise is like one of the biggest franchises for me growing up. And Indiana Jones will always be my number one favorite Hollywood character of all time. So that's going to be an amazing recording that I cannot wait to do. So until next time, I am Christian Taylor with...
Aiden Grady.
And Preston Vanswall.
And you're listening to the Tales of Music and Film.